Okay, we're still here with Company F and a soldier who's got a very, very unique story to tell. So we're going to let him tell that story.
Good morning. My name is Irving Moy, and I'm president of Company F, 14th Connecticut Volunteer Infantry. And I'm very fortunate that I get to portray a Chinese soldier by the name of Joseph Pearce, who fought with the original Company F. Now, Joseph Pearce was probably 5 documented Chinese that fought in the Civil War, and many people don't realize that Chinese actually participated. Now, Joseph Pearce, he was born in Canton, China, and at the age of 10, he was sold by his father to a sea captain by the name of Amos Peck. Now, I thought that was really odd because in China, sons are very important in terms of carrying on their name and also taking care of their parents at old age. But China at that point was undergoing its own revolution. So there was a lot of hunger, a lot of fighting. So I had to believe that the father thought that this young boy would have a better chance in life, even if he sold him to a sea captain. And at the time, sea captains and missionaries, they were ones that bought Chinese boys to be servants or to be cabin boys. But Amos Peck, he comes from a family that's well known in the Berlin area in Connecticut. They were abolitionists, Congregationalists, and he didn't believe in slavery. So what he did was he brought the young boy back to Connecticut. And during the time that they came over, it was probably about a year's time journey from China to the United States. The sailors didn't really know his name or couldn't pronounce it, so they started calling him Joe. That's how he got his first name. And then in 1853, when they landed in the United States, Franklin Pierce was president, so they gave him the surname of Pierce. So Joseph Pearce was his name. And he grew up with Amos Peck's brothers and sisters in Berlin, Connecticut, learned to write and read. At that time, there weren't many Chinese in the East Coast. Most of them had settled on the West Coast. So he was pretty well accepted by his community because he was growing up with a prominent family. At the age of 21, in 1862, of July 26, he, and along with other people from the Berlin area, enlisted with the 14th Connecticut. And in less than a month, they were enrolled in the 2nd Army Corps, the Army of Potomac. The very first battle that they fought was the Battle of Antietam, and that was known as the bloodiest day in this history of any battle fought on this soil. And in less than 13 hours, there were 26,000 casualties. And at the time, there were only 35 cities that had as many people in the United States. And then their next battle was Chancellorsville. No, I'm sorry. The next battle was Fredericksburg, and that was again a Union defeat. And then from that point on, they went to Chancellorsville and then to Gettysburg. And at that point, the 14th Connecticut, they started with 1,000 men and only wound up with 160 soldiers fit for duty at Gettysburg, most of them because of illness. And Company 14th was positioned at the Bloody Angle, at the peak of where Pickett's charge came in. And the 14th, because there were so few men, that was probably the weakest point in the line, and the Confederates didn't realize that. But we know that we were able to repulse Pickett's charge. And the 14th at that point captured 3 battle flags and a number of prisoners. So they did, reflect glory to the Union and to Connecticut. In November of that year, Pierce was promoted to the rank of corporal, the highest ranking Chinese soldier in the Civil War. Afterwards, he settled in Meriden, Connecticut. Now, the first city directory that I found in 1870, it had it listed that Pierce was a silver engraver. Now that was odd because his enrollment papers said his profession was a farmer. Well, lo and behold, I think God had his hand on his shoulder because the sisters of Peck, one of them married into a family that started the silver trade in Meriden. So I think that opened the door for him to learn a profession. In 1876, he married Martha Morgan from Portland, Connecticut. Now, I thought that was unique because the Chinese at that point had arranged marriages. So I hope they think that by marrying an American woman is truly a love story. They had 4 children, 2 sons and 2 daughters, but unfortunately the daughters didn't survive into adulthood. The sons did. In 1882, Congress passed an act called the Chinese Exclusion Act. And what they said was that the Chinese were taking jobs away from Americans. Chinese were very important in building the railroads. They did a lot of the work that probably Americans didn't want to do. But that particular act made it very difficult for Chinese that could not become citizens. And once they were here, it was very difficult for them to bring family members over from China. So to me, it had to be very tough for Joseph Pierce, who fought for this country, to really have his family under that type of prejudice. And in the 1880 census, Pierce listed that he was from China. But in the 1900 census, he listed that he was from Japan, and he cut off his Q, so it showed that he wasn't Chinese. Now, that particular act lasted until 1943, when China became an ally of the United States. Even then, however, they only allowed 160 Chinese into the United States. It wasn't until the late 1960s, after Vietnam, that the United States opened the doors for more people from Asia to come over to be immigrants to this country. Now, Pierce worked for the Botanico Silver Company. He went to church at the Trinity United Methodist Church. He actually worked, lived, and died within a 1-mile radius. He died at the age of 73, January 3rd, 1916, and he's buried in Walnut Grove Cemetery. And his obituary didn't mention anything about his role in the Civil War. It basically said he was well known and well liked. And I think that if we could write our own obituaries, that would be something that we would aspire to.
Well, I want to thank you for a fascinating history lesson, and also thank you for visiting the Derby Historical Society today.
Well, it's important to have historical societies like this. We're very happy to be here to be able to promote the work that you do.
Keeping history alive.
That's correct.